Pawlak.
What?
What was your birthday?
My birthday is April 22nd, 1930.
What do you remember about Pearl Harbor Day? December 7th, 1941.
What a vivid memory I have of that. I was 11 years old. No, not quite 11. And I was playing outside, and my dad came running out of the house. He said, "Conrad, where's Pearl Harbor?" I said, "How do I know where Pearl Harbor was here? I was only a 10-year-old youngster." And I said, "My God, I don't know where Pearl Harbor was." So we ran in, and of course then I think it was Edward R. Murrow, or who, yeah, I think it was Edward R. Murrow, was broadcasting and talking in Honolulu. Well, we had that television on. See, my dad was going to watch a football game at that time. I think it was the Chicago Bears were going to play. And I can only remember the fact that newscasts were coming in. And that day, on that Monday, I went back at noon hour to listen to President Roosevelt address Congress for the declaration of war against Japan and Germany at that time. And what a vivid, it had such an impact on us, because when we were youngsters, I was a Boy Scout, and we had paper drives and collecting aluminum cans, whatever we could for the war effort at that time. And you know what? I have a large collection of World War II memorabilia, books and what have you, because at that time, being a youngster, it had such an impact. We had air raid drills. When we were in school, we would hide underneath our desks. We would have air raid drills, and then they'd take us home. And my dad was an air raid warden, and he'd have a hat on, and we'd put the lights out and draw the drapes in the house. What an impact that had on my life. And it's, as I said to my children, I think it had a case in my mind, because I had seen families going to war. And I think I have a vivid memory, especially of a neighbor of mine who was missing in action. His name was Joe Pensek. I can still remember this day. I was playing outside, and a messenger came on a bicycle with a telegram to his mother. And all I heard was her screaming. My mother didn't know what was going on. She was screaming beyond that her son was missing in action during the Battle of the Bulge. He was in that 1st Airborne Division. And his family, I can still see the tears and the grief in that family. It was just, I will never forget that. It had such an impact on me to see the tragedy of that situation. But he was freed after the Second World War, but he was injured in the Battle of the Bulge and captured.
What relief for the parents to finally know that he was alive.
That their son was safe, yeah. After, but the father died not knowing it, though.
Oh gosh.
He died prior to the son coming from the service after the end of World War II.
Did you what was your family? What did your mom and dad do for a living?
What was my background?
No, yeah. What did your dad do for a living?
Well, my dad and my mother were both rather uneducated. They probably went as far as 6th grade. Their educational levels were very minimal, but my dad was an entrepreneur. And when I say an entrepreneur, first of all I remember is he worked at what they used to be called the Niagara Motors as a machinist. After that failed, then he went and worked in a bakery truck. My mother worked at the Van Ralt as a sewing lady. And my dad then he had a poultry business, and he worked at the meat market as a butcher. So their background was what you wouldn't call a professional level, but my dad's goal, I was an only child, you're going to go to college. And when I went to high school, I took college entrance courses, and I was very fortunate. While I was in college, I got my degree in mathematics and sciences. I love physics, and I love all the science courses in mathematics. So I took as many as I could. But at that time, I enrolled at St. Bonaventure University, and I was going to go into the field of dentistry and medicine. Well, what had happened, I took ROTC in college too. And at my second year, back in 1950, when the Korean War broke out, my dad said, get out of the ROTC because they're going to take you into service. So when I completed college, I was drafted. I completed college in May of 1952. And I was drafted, and I entered the military on Memorial Day of May 1952.
Wow.
And I was inducted at Fort Devens, Massachusetts. And after I was given an assignment to military training in infantry at Indiantown Gap Military Reservation. And for some strange reason, I was chosen as platoon sergeant or whatever. And while I was in training, I even served as cadre on the ranges. And I was given some responsibility. What I liked about that is I didn't have to pull KP then. But when I finished basic, because I was chosen as the outstanding trainee in the regiment, they wanted me to go officers candidate school. Would you believe a lieutenant, Lieutenant Maynard Austin, actually drove me from Indiantown Gap to try to convince my wife that I should be an officer.
Wow.
I came back home all the way from Indiantown Gap, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania area. He drove me all the way to try to convince my wife to have me go to officers candidate school. And she said, no way, he'd have to stay in the service for 4 years. He could not convince her. But I had been given then the lucrative assignments of military intelligence at General Headquarters in Indiantown Gap. I served in the Intelligence Division, and that's where I was involved in the Julius and Ethel Rosenberg case. At that time, Indiantown Gap, the only reason, and you can read that in that account that I have there, I think it was Indiantown Gap was chosen to do the screening of any communists who entered the military because of our proximity to the Lewisburg Federal Prison in Pennsylvania. And I think it was only because of our proximity also to Washington, D.C. Now, I served under Major Mack and another colonel, I can't remember his name. But I served in the Intelligence Division right underneath the general. General Zwicker, that was his name. In fact, General Zwicker was a primary candidate. Remember Senator Joe McCarthy? McCarthy tried to implement Zwicker in this communist cell. And that was the downfall of McCarthy. With Zwicker, Zwicker, if you have, is Z-W-I-C-K-E-R. I'll never forget that. And because of that condemnation, McCarthy went down the tube. Yeah.
Z-W-I-C...
In the Cold War enterprise.
Zwicker, Z-W-I-C-K-E-R?
Z-W-I-C-K-E-R.
Okay, got it.
General Zwicker. And when McCarthy accused him, that was his downfall, because he had labeled everybody a communist. And now, what had happened was, when I served on that trial, I didn't serve on a trial, I served in the interrogation of people who, at the time, because of Prohibition, unfortunately, they signed papers when they came to the houses that they didn't realize they were signing communist papers, that they were becoming a member of the communist cell. Well, these American citizens worked at the Russian embassy as cooks, as porters, as taxi drivers. But because they were American citizens, they had to do their tour of duty in the military. And that's where I came into the situation. I served in that military intelligence in G2 at Indiantown Gap. And what we were doing at that time is interrogating these people who were in the communist cell, if they had any knowledge of Julius or Ethel Rosenberg. Well, what had happened was the agents who were doing the interrogating, and I was there, I had a .45 pistol on my right hand side, I'll never forget that, and I more or less stood guard. Well, what happened was they were using constantly the Fifth Amendment. I refused to answer on the grounds that it might incriminate me. Well, our agents became rather exasperated with the Inquisition, so they said, Connie, stay here, see what you can do with these guys. They took off, had a cup of coffee, so while they were gone, and I didn't realize there were microphones talking, receiving our conversation, and I asked them, I said, in casual conversation, I said, how come you're a communist? And they would, and you know, at one point, one guy told me to go to HELL, and, but I said, hey, look at what you've got here in America, and I started flowering up our existence as American citizens and all the things that we have, and they told me, then they started opening up. They said, well, things were tough on my parents. We were destitute. We signed any papers that came along. And I said, well, what was it like working at the Russian embassy? Well, we got money for that. They hired us because we were labeled the communists. And I said, did you ever see Julius or Ethel Rosenberg? They said, no, but I would tell, we saw Claude Fuchs, and we saw, Claude Fuchs was a noted, definitely communist activity member, and he said he was collecting the information that was David Greenglass was given to Julius Rosenberg. David Greenglass was a brother of Ethel Rosenberg. And David Greenglass worked as a machinist at Los Alamos. He worked on the triggering device of the atomic bomb. And that secrets were then given to Julius Rosenberg, who then passed it on to the Russian embassy, who gave it to Claude Fuchs. And so my responsibility at that time, when I was questioning him, and I said, well, what did Claude Fuchs do? He said, naturally, he passed it on to the Russian people in Moscow. And he said, that was the development of the Russian atomic energy in Russia. And I said, then was Ethel Rosenberg, do you think she was responsible? He said, no, but she never declined her innocence, he said. So because of that, I was given this award.
So basically, you were the light in the interview process. The other guys were the heavies, and you were the light.
What's that?
They call them light and heavy. You were the light person being doing the interviewing. You were the good guy. The other guys were threatening. Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, how many would there be in the court? How would it actually be set up where these folks were interviewed?
Okay.
Give me the setup.
I
By the way,
gotta
do
tell
you want to put that cord? I want to get that cord underneath his arm.
If you
I think
ever
it's
went into Indian Cow Gap Military Reservation, there was a building there which was right on the corner as you came in, right across from the governor's mansion. It was our general headquarters.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was on the first floor of the general headquarters. General Zwicker's office was right above me. Down below, and I indicated that, was like a dungeon. It was almost like in a basement, but it was a room where the interrogation took place. You never saw anything so drab in your life as that dungeon existence. The lighting was so minimal, it was almost creepy. But in that discussion, the CIC agent who worked in our department was Mr. Jones. I don't remember what his first name, but he wore civilian clothes. He was a CIA agent. There were two official FBI agents. And then there was another intelligence agent. There were 4 of them. And every one of them tried to get information from these known communist members of the military.
How would you know that? When you say known communists, would they, you
How did we know they were communists? Because when they entered the military, they had to sign. Remember when you signed papers what your religion was and all
Yeah.
this and that? They had to sign what their affiliation was. And then we had to do a background check on them. And when we called in their school officials, or their government officials, they labeled themselves as communist members at that time. But they were still American citizens, so they had to be. They were drafted.
well, so you were doing background checks on
We did
these individuals,
I was responsible for background checks.
and they were therefore all part of the military at the time. All of these people.
Well, yeah, they were served, but they were never given military assignments which were of any secretive nature. In other words, they were never given, I can tell you this, not that anybody wants to know, their job mostly was KP.
Yeah.
That was it.
So they were KP in the military, and at the same time, their relationship, many of them, was they were in the Russian embassy. They were assigned to the Russian embassy. Who assigned them?
Well, they were assigned just like a regular job, I guess, because some of them, like I said, some drove the cars, the limos, some were cooks. Most of them were cooks and porters. That was their basic military. See, the Russians they brought in certain people from Russia, but they also hired American communist citizens. Yeah.
So that's how you knew they were.
That's how we knew, because we knew where they worked.
Ah.
Yeah. But they were drafted during the Korean War because they were at that age level.
So, wow. How many interviews were you part of? Do you remember? Was there?
Well, my interview at that time lasted for maybe about 2 days.
Okay.
2 days. Well, the first day I just kind of stood guard. And I just sat there and watched the agents talking to them. And all they got from the people at that time was I refused to answer on the ground that it might incriminate me, the Fifth Amendment. Well, the next day, the agents became rather exasperated. They got fed up. And they said, we're going to take a break. Connie, sit here with them. And as I said, I had my 45 in me on my side. But then I started talking to them casually. But all the information that I got was recorded. We had microphones, and I didn't even know the microphones were up there. But they had the microphones up there, and they were recording my casual conversation with them. Well, I got them that spilled more information than the agents ever got. And that's why I got this award.
So, did you just interview? Were you there for just one interview, or were there
That's all
several?
I had was the one interview, but I had that interview for a good almost half an hour.
Wow.
But within that half an hour, man, did they spill why they became communists, their families, and they saw Claude Fuchs and all that, but they said they never saw Julius or Ethel Rosenberg there, because Julius was passing his information on, he had like a cigarette, not a cigarette, but a container with matches and that, and he was putting it in a mailbox there. And that's how he was passing that information into them.
How fascinating. So when you finally got done with that one interview, what did the agents who were listening to all of this, what did they say to you?
Well, the agents, after they got done, they thanked me. And they said, we appreciate what you've done, only because they said we were never able to get any more information from them. And so, well, as I said, they wanted to make me an officer. But I declined. I'll never forget the lieutenant actually coming with me, driving me. Literally, can you imagine a lieutenant driving you all the way from your military post to your home and meeting your wife, my family, and trying to convince them I should be an officer? I never heard,
So about what time would this interview have occurred? In
Well, the Rosenbergs were executed in 1953.
Correct.
And the interview that I had was I think in July of 1953.
Okay.
And they were executed, I don't even know if it was August or July of 53.
Now,
My feeling at that time was Ethel was she was innocent in a sense. All she knew, her husband was involved in some clandestine type of activity because he was getting money. And she had to find out where it was coming from, I'm sure. But he was the one that was responsible, Julius was. But David Greenglass, the brother-in-law, is the one who did the confessing against him. And yet David Greenglass supplied that information because he was a machinist. See, David Greenglass was, he worked in his father's jewelry shop. And he was a good machinist at that time, cutting giant diamonds and stuff like that. And at that time, the military, when the atomic bomb was being developed at Los Alamos, we needed skilled machinists. And he was hired.
Mm-hmm.
He was in the military. He was in the service at the time.
Yeah, the key prosecution witness, I'm reading this now, was a guy named Harry Gold and
Harry Gold, right.
and David Greenglass.
Right.
Did you know much about the trial that was going on? This would have been, because when you were doing the interview, was really, they'd already been convicted.
They'd been convicted. I'll tell you what, that trial was taking place almost prior to my being inducted to the service.
Right.
And I knew, some of the events that took place. And then I guess what I did is I got sort of an indoctrination in when the agents were interviewing.
Uh-huh.
Because of the information they were passing on, they said, did you ever see David Greenglass? And all this stuff started coming into my mind, when they were doing the interview as to what was taking place there. I don't know, I think I was more fascinated by Senator Joe McCarthy at that time because of how he was accusing everybody of being a communist, And it was the scare nationally at that time. Because anytime you looked at somebody and said, is he a communist? That was a trend at that time, Because McCarthy was accusing whoever he knew. In fact, I think he almost accused General Eisenhower of something like that.
What was the feeling on the base? So, here, your boss, General Zwicker, was the eye of the storm. McCarthy was looking at him.
All right.
And were you at Indiantown Gap then when Zwicker was?
I was there when Zwicker was the commanding officer. And then when the post closed down, which was back, our military post closed, I think it was September, I'm not sure, September of 1953 as an Indiantown Gap as a military instruction base. Because at that time, the Korean War, there were conversations of peace in Panmunjom. And Zwicker at that time, I don't know where his assignment was, but McCarthy was going hog wild, accusing then the military of communist activities. And then there was a big to-do, generals and colonels and all of them being challenged and being being accused of being communist activity members. Well, what happened when he started doing that was his downfall. And I will never forget, but at that time, guess where I was assigned? I was given an assignment after military at Indiantown Gap. I was assigned to the Buffalo, New York Recruiting and Induction Station. And my job there was in charge of transportation and food dispensing for new recruits and inductees. I was home every day.
Wow.
I was driving back and forth. Can you imagine for my last year of military service to have that kind of assignment? And that was done, I think, primarily because of what I did here. Because somebody was looking after me is all I can say.
So when when Zwicker goes before Senator McCarthy's, and that's on TV.
Yeah.
I mean, it's big
That's
news.
right.
It's big news.
Big news. And how are you kind of reacting to this? Because you knew the guy. There he
Well, I
is.
knew General Zwicker.
Yeah. What kind of guy was he?
Oh man, he was tough. He was a tough nut, is all I can say. I remember him when it was, man, when he walked, he was almost like walking at attention, is all I can remember. And boy, you better salute when you saw him. And when I was leaving my office and he was coming up the sidewalk, man, I had my arm like this to give him a salute because he responded. And he was a man of no patience. And he was a good military man, a no-nonsense individual. He was a West Point man. And I'm just trying to think of his demeanor. When the military post closed, I was chosen to be one of the color guards. And I can still remember him as being up in the stands. And I didn't know too much more about him. He was in charge at that time. We had infantry regiments, and a lot of the infantry trainees at that time from our post, we went through 16 weeks of basic training because we were going to be assigned as replacements in Korea. Well, what had happened, my regiment, which graduated, and there were 4 of our companies that graduated after 16 weeks, I was maybe the only one left behind. And I had no idea. I used to take tests and what have you, and evidently the tests were pretty good, so I was assigned to General Headquarters. But my outfit was sent to Incheon, and in Incheon, that was where we had the bloody massacre, if you want to call it, with the Chinese communists, because some of my buddies were even bayoneted. And our outfits out there were lacking enough. The Chinese communists were coming in such droves, they were running out of ammunition. They had to use bayonets. And my buddy got bayoneted on the front lines. And when he got out of the service, I saw him, he was stationed at Walter Reed Hospital after a while so they could sew him up. And he told me how fortunate I was I didn't have to go and in that bloody ridge that they went through at that time, because at that time the communists wanted to have the peace talks, but they wanted to get more land over the 38th parallel. And so they were coming in droves. And he said we couldn't kill them. They were coming so fast and so many. You know.
Did you have any language skills? Can you speak Polish?
Did I have language skills?
Yes.
I could talk Polish.
Okay. Could you understand a little
And
bit?
that's probably one of the reasons.
Yeah.
I could understand Polish.
Yeah.
And I had language skills in, I also took in the college Spanish, I could Greek, and I took German.
You could probably understand a little
I
bit of
could
Russian.
converse in Spanish, I could converse in, well, I knew a lot of Latin, but I wasn't that good at it. But I knew Greek, and I knew Polish primarily.
Could you understand a little bit of Russian from your Polish?
I could that was a problem. Yes, I could understand Russian.
Yeah.
And that was another factor. I think maybe that's why I was assigned to military. I was given, I can talk to you in Polish. Ja cię kocham, panie and jak dziecięcko słowa będzie zbawiona dusza moja, ja wiem, and you know, jak szybko mijają chwile, jak szybko płynie czas, raz rok, za dzień, za chwilę, razem nie będzie nam. Yeah, I can talk in Polish, and I can talk in Spanish too. Adios muchachos compañeros, se me vida para requerida de que el tiempo te me buscar mi ropa entrar la rada. And I know German a little bit too, yeah.
So let's go back to World War II. When the Germans are invading Poland, what did your family think about that?
Oh, that was horrible. And when I saw what was going on there, with what Hitler was doing at the time, and when they crossed over into the Polish border, and the trouble was, the Polish people at that time didn't have enough equipment, military equipment. They were a peace-loving people, and they did not have enough to fight the German Stukas and bombers that were coming over. And a lot of the displaced Polish people joined the Royal Air Force and the British Army afterwards too. But my family was devastated because I still have, and my son did a background check on my family, and I have family living, I guess ancestors living in Poland. My grandfather came over from Poland when he was 9 years old, but he was a German Pole. He spoke more German than he did Polish, and he was 9 years old, and his background, they were a farming group in Poland. He said at the time they didn't even have mechanized equipment. He said we had horse-drawn equipment, our plows and stuff like that. And he remembers his father making him go ahead behind the plow even, and in Poland. But I do have some, I'm sure there are many ancestors. My son did that ancestral background. My other family member was from my grandmother's side. They were from the Russian sector of Poland. See, Poland was divided at that time between Germany and Russia. And one grandfather came from the Russian sector of Poland. The other grandfather came from the German sector of Poland. And I got to tell you, I had a relative that was a movie star in Hollywood. Her name was, she was the Shimmy Queen. What the heck was her last name? Oh. But her father and my grandfather were brothers, and she was a Hollywood star. Gilda Gray. Gilda Gray. That was her name. But her actual name was Michalska. But they changed it to Gilda Gray, and she became a movie star. In fact, if you remember a movie made by Rita Hayworth,
Right.
Gilda Gray, she sued Rita Hayworth because she used her name in that movie, Gilda. Yeah, but she was a Shimmy Queen. And how that happened was her father owned a tavern in Chicago. And according to her, because the tavern didn't have any heat, and she was working in behind the bar, she started shimmying, she called, instead of, what did she call it? She called it the shimmy, I guess. But it was, what the dickens was she doing? I don't know, she couldn't speak English that well. And the word shimmy came out as opposed to doing whatever, I don't know. But that was fascinating, yeah.
You have a fascinating ability for history. Were you, did you like to study history?
I loved history, but I was a mathematics major at college. I was in mathematics and science. I was going to go into the field of medicine. In fact, I was accepted at St. Louis University.
Mm-hmm.
My draft notice came before my acceptance. I was going to go to dental school. I got drafted, and a week after my acceptance at St. Louis University Medical School came. I was devastated. Well, I got married while I was in service. And because I got married, my wife gave birth to twins
Oh.
on that, and there was no way I could go back to medical school. Then I went into teaching mathematics because I loved math. And then I was a recipient of a lot of scholarships while I was teaching. I did graduate work. I got my master's degree. Then I had scholarships at remember the National Science Foundation, set up by the federal government? I had scholarships to the University of West Virginia. I had a scholarship to Pomona College, Associated College of Southern California. I had a scholarship to San Diego State, to Florida State. I got my almost the equivalent of my doctor's degree in mathematics. And then I had also at the State University at Fredonia scholarships. So I got all my mathematical degrees, and then I majored in physics and astronomical sciences. Yeah.
And where did you teach?
I taught mathematics and science initially, but then I started going into mathematics. I taught calculus, differential integral equations.
High school or college?
I taught high school, and then I also had, I retired from high school.
Yeah.
And then I taught trigonometry and geometry. I love geometry, and I love trig. Calculus I enjoyed, but not as much as the other courses. I love the kids. I enjoyed teaching, and well, all I can say is it was a great career. I had 37 years.
Did you teach in Dunkirk here?
I taught in Dunkirk, evening courses to adults.
Oh, really?
I taught mathematics to adults. Some people, remember, hey, Williams, the guy that owned the Buffalo Observer?
Yeah.
I taught him. And he was from West Point, but he wanted a refresh in mathematics, so I had him in my class.
Wow.
Hank Williams. And then I had a lot of teachers. I'm trying to think of their names in the adult courses in Dunkirk. I was teaching them mathematics. The lady that was principal at, what the dickens was she? Principal up at St. Mary's Academy at the time, or St. Mary's? St. Elizabeth Seton. I had her in my class. Then I taught adult education at Fredonia. And I was a village trustee, and I was deputy county clerk I was served 6 years in Mayville.
Really?
I was in charge under county clerk Henry Weiler.
Henry, sure.
Oh yeah, I served 6 years there in Mayville.
My gosh.
I was in charge of the motor vehicle divisions, all three divisions: Mayville, Jamestown, and Dunkirk.
Yeah. Well, you've had a distinguished career.
I had a big career.
So what's the highlight? We sit here in Dunkirk, or Fredonia today, as you sit back and you look at your career, which is so varied, you know.
You know what I can't stand is this political infighting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like that. I think if people are there to serve, and my job when I was on the trustee in the village of Fredonia, we established the Russ Joy Park. We established a good water system, wastewater treatment plant. We gave employment to youth in the summertime. And we fixed the highways. And we set up a zoning board so the village of Fredonia had buildings that were zoned and protected because of their industrial capacity or their educational regions or what have you. And that was our job. Today, it's just, I don't know. A lot of their thoughts, I think, are escaping what they can do for the people. And they're trying to strive for some political notoriety, I think. That's more what they want. And that bothers me. I served under a wonderful man by the name of Russ Joy. Russ Joy was the mayor at that time. And then Dr. Leone took over as mayor after Russ Joy. And I served with some real good people by the name of Russ Trump, who was a village trustee, Bill Ludwig, Dan Jones, we had some wonderful people in that office. And let's see, I'm trying to figure out if I were 6 or 7 years, I was a village trustee.
Did your paths cross with an attorney by the name of Jim Summer?
Jim Summers was a wonderful man. Jim Summers approached me at that time. The Village of Fredonia there was a law a firm by the name of Sargent, Webster, Cripshaw, and Foley. They were architects out of Syracuse. And they wanted to establish in the Village of Fredonia, I'm trying to think, this is escaping my mind, rezone the place into, get rid of the old buildings and put up new ones. What the dick is, I can't remember, that's escaping my mind. But Dunkirk fell for it. And what happened at Dunkirk is they set up Dunkirk into almost a whole parking lot.
Yeah.
And we said, no way. What we did is we preserved the buildings that we have, and today we have the Opera House, and Fredonia can look back, and I was there, we established a great big parking zone in back of the village. We kept the village intact, and we kept the historical aspect there. And I'm proud of that fact. And I was able to get at that time, because of the college expanding from a population of a student population of 2,500 to 5,000 students, it set up a problem for our infrastructure. I went to Washington. That's when I got Senator Kennedy's signature, and I interviewed him. In fact, I've got, remember, I'll tell you, the girl that died, that was killed when Bobby Kennedy drove her off Chappaquiddick.
Yeah.
She drowned. I got her signature here. She was interviewing me.
Wow.
I've got her. Maybe I've still got that in here. I can show you her signatures and that. But let me look for that.
Sure, sure. And by the way, while you're looking at, just so we're going to take a couple pictures of your pictures. Who is that? You? Down in Indian Town Gap?
No, that's a guy that was assigned to West Point. I took his picture, and he took my picture, but my daughter's got it.
Okay.
We had just gone through basic, and we had gone through the infiltration course.
Gotcha.
And you can see how dirty we were.
Okay.
That's when I got that award as an outstanding carer. There's my mother.
Okay.
And they were interviewed. I was awarded the regimental. They had this great big parade. Or it must have been about the entire regiment, and I was chosen the outstanding cadet in the whole outfit at that time. And that's some of the guys in my company. I'm someplace in there. I don't know where though.
Yeah, oh, that's terrific.
And let's see who that picture is over there. There's my mother at the reviewing stand.
Which one's your mother?
Right here with the blanket.
Oh, got it.
That was in September, and it was cold then.
Yeah.
And my dad took this picture of her, but they were in a reviewing stand, and this is when I got that award.
Yeah, that's terrific. Well, congratulations.
Yeah, but I got this.
Well, there, take a look.
I got this thing here. I'm sure from Mary Jo Kopechny.
Mary Jo Kopechny, yeah?
Yeah, Mary Jo Kopechny was the girl that gave me the pictures.
So she worked for Kennedy's office, huh?
And she worked as a secretary in Kennedy's office. Yeah, and these are my wedding pictures here.
How many children did you have?
16. I got to show you some pictures of
Your
my
wife
family.
deserves an award.
Huh?
Your wife deserves an award.
Oh, she was the most fantastic. I'll show you my family.
How did you meet your wife?
My wife was a college graduate
Where'd you meet her?
in high school.
Oh, in high school.
In high school. Here's my family's picture. We had a reunion, and 3 members of my family weren't there.
Oh,
My
my
God.
word.
My grandchildren and my great-grandchildren.
Jeez.
Wow.
What a crew. Good looking people.
Here's my wife. I suppose we're going to be leaving on our honeymoon.
Yeah, my gosh. Gorgeous lady.
She was a beautiful lady.
Yeah.
she was chosen to be a model at Haber's to send her to New York City
Oh.
because she was 5'8", I
Yeah.
guess. And let me see if I got that. I thought, oh, this is Senator Kennedy. Here it is. This is Mary Jo Kopechny's signature. She sent this and that picture to me, and those were the people in that photo that my daughters got. She wrote all that when we were in Washington, and she took our names and she sent that to me.
It was very thoughtful of her to do that. Where's your signature?
That came in with this picture and with Jacob Javits' picture. But at that time I had 12 children. So Senator Bobby Kennedy signed 12 pictures. And then he wrote down to the Pawlak family.
That's funny.
That's terrific. Congratulations.
Huh?
Congratulations.
Yeah.
What was your impression of Kennedy when you met him?
Well, I liked him.
Yeah.
He was very nice. And he was very accommodating. And he said, at that time, he sympathized with the village of Fredonia because we didn't have that kind of tax money. He said, I'm going to do everything I can to get you money. And we were represented at that time. And I said, we had to have the college put up its tall structure. We need a fire truck with a ladder that it can reach in case of a fire and all that. And he said, I'll see what I can do. He said, I'm sure we have funding for that. And so for our infrastructure, I got $500,000. And then my picture was in the paper at that time, yeah.
Good for you. Wow.
What's the question we should be asking you?
About my family?
No, about you, about your career.
Well, I think the thing I enjoyed about my career is I was disappointed that I didn't get into the medical field. But my disappointment, I think, was superseded by the fact that I had the most illustrious career teaching young people. I enjoyed to see many of them loved mathematics after that. And I am so proud of the fact that when I came in, students that I taught were able to achieve careers which the mathematics career gave them that impetus. And I guess there's a satisfaction there that I can't weigh because of the enjoyment of watching young people becoming things and reaching careers that they probably never thought they would have a goal in doing. Yeah, teaching was a wonderful experience. It didn't pay you that much, but it gave you a great satisfaction of seeing young people develop into wonderful citizens and what have you. So my military career was also gratifying. I can never, I honestly, I just don't understand why somebody was looking after me to have an assignment that I had and then to be stationed in my final year in Buffalo, New York, and being home every day and having a military career and getting, besides, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, you've been terrific. We can't thank you enough for coming today.
Oh,
Wonderful interview.
well, what are you guys going to do with this stuff?
Well, we're filming it, and one of the things we do is we'll put some of this, edit it, and put some of that up on YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
So when you talked about Rosenberg and Zwecker,
Yeah.
we'll have some.
If you want to read my account of my military, though, where is that? Or is it down there?
I don't know if it's not here. This is my notes.
I had it typed out. My daughter typed it out for me. Oh, where did I put that? Oh, wait a minute, I bet I put it back in here. I described that Julius and Ethel Rosenberg
Wow.
Inquisition,
Wow.
but my daughter typed that out for me.
When you went to St. Bonaventure, did you by any chance remember a teacher by the name of Sixtus O'Connor?
Who?
Father Sixtus
Father
O'Connor?
Sixtus.
Yeah.
I had an instructor. I'm not sure if he was Father Sixtus. I've had Father Coleman Dunn. Oh, I had so many instructors that I had the Millers for mathematics, Father Duffy for mathematics, and he was my prefect over there. And I had, Father Sixtus. I remember him.
What do you remember about him?
Let's see. I'm trying to think of what he taught. Did he teach Greek? No, I had Father, who did I have for the Greek language? Oh my God. I don't know. I can't remember too much about him.
He was, Father Sixtus O'Connor was a priest at the Nuremberg trial.
Oh, wait a minute.
He was one of only two.
Yeah, there was also, there was another priest, and he was my teacher, he was my prefect. He was at Nuremberg, and I'm trying to think of what his name was. I think he taught history. I think he taught history. I might have had him for all I know.
And this, so you were at St. Bonaventure during what time period? You
I was
graduated?
at Bonaventure. I started there in 1948, and I graduated in 1952.
Okay. So, because I'm looking.
And I'll tell you who was my prefect. Father Dan Rooney. His brother owned the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Art
Father
Rooney.
Dan Rooney was my prefect.
Yeah. Art Rooney,
Art Rooney's brother.
I'll be darned.
Right.
Really?
And the Steelers used to practice at St. Bonaventure
Huh.
at their summer camp.
And one of the quarterbacks of the football team was Ted Marshabroda.
Ted Marshabroda, good buddy of mine.
No kidding.
I got my yearbook and Ted signed to my best buddy, Connie Pawlak.
Wow.
Yeah.
So tell me
because
about-
our suites were right next to each other. Ted Marshabroda, Chris Gatturo was a quarterback, and at that time we had a guy from. Hugh DeVore was the football coach, and he came in from Notre Dame. So he was bringing, right after the war years, he brought in a lot of the guys from Notre Dame that said, hey, we're not going to make the Notre Dame team. So they came to St. Bonaventure. Nunzio Marino, Phil Colella, all these guys played for Notre Dame. And but Ted Marshabroda, he was an outstanding quarterback. And he went into, he coached also. But he was instrumental with the Buffalo Bills in that no-huddle offense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, here we go. Sixtus O'Connor
Right.
returned to St. Bonaventure College after his job and taught philosophy and German there from 1947 to 1950.
Same time
1950.
frame you were there, yeah.
Yeah, he would have been there at that time, yeah. Well, I can vaguely remember, but I can't, I think I had him for something or other.
Right.
I took logic, I took philosophy, psychology, I had a whole mixture of science courses. I had biology and chemistry and physics and, oh my God.
Well, this is phenomenal.
Did you get scholarships to go to Bonaventure?
What's that?
Did you get scholarships to go to Bonaventure?
I did not have a scholarship.
You worked your way through.
Not at Bonaventure. After I graduated from Bonaventure, I had all scholarships. I never paid for a graduate course in my life. I had, as I said, I attended 5 universities, and I had scholarships.
Jeez.
They paid my books, they paid my tuition, they paid my food and dormitory fees, transportation. And then
Wow.
guess what I got? At that time, my wife and I had children. I got $400 for each child in my scholarship total.
Which was a lot of money back then.
Yeah,
What's
I made
400
out like a
times
bandit
16?
for those scholarships. As I said, the University of Buffalo, I was going to get my doctor's degree, but my advisor died. So I wasn't about to go through the whole procedure then. But I did study at the University of Buffalo too, for my doctor's degree in mathematics.
I'm gonna get a photocopy of this. Is this okay? If I-
Yes, take that. I'd like to have you have a photocopy of
Yeah,
that.
because this would answer a few questions here.
You've been a tremendous interview. Tremendous interview.
Oh, thank you.
Good guy.
You know, I look back at those days, and to me, at that time, it was rather devastating to be called into the service. And I still object to the fact that he called it a police action. It was war. The Korean campaign was war. Men got killed. Battles were won and battles were fought. And I was fortunate. I was so lucky, I never got sent to the front lines. Never got sent.
If you had one word of wisdom to pass along to your grandchildren, what would that word be?
To my grandchildren,
Yeah, one word.
one word. Love your country.
Thank you.
Love your country. Love your family. And that was the big thing, my family.
I guess.
And as you can see, the family that I got. And as you can see, and these are my grandchildren's handprints. Not all of them either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should all be so fortunate.
I got 38 grandchildren,
Oh, dear.
14 great-grandchildren. And I'm very proud of my children's successes.
You should be.
They have achieved high things. All I can say is they're doing very well.
Good for you. Congratulations. Wonderful.
We salute you.
Yep.
Huh?
We salute you.
Well,
Wonderful.
thank you, sir.
Thank you.